Doors is a horror game, and much like all horror games, they contain aspects which are meant to terrify those who play it. Doors is unique though, as sometimes the true fear doesn't come from the gameplay itself, but rather from digging into the lore. Take for example the Seek Chase. On its surface, it just appears that during this part of the game you run from a strange, goopy humanoid. Nothing too scary. However, by digging into the story, it can be discovered that what you are actually running from is an all-consuming parasitic beast who wants to assimilate you into its ever-growing body mass. If you're curious about that, I recommend you watch the video on the screen. Anyways, one other entity within the game which has one of these terrifying lore reveals is Dupe, strangely enough. And that is precisely what I want to discuss today. You see, something horrifying is going on with this character, and by the end of this video you'll realize just how monstrous they are. So with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so on the surface, Dupe doesn't seem all that interesting. They are an entity which resides behind fake doors in both the hotel and the mines, and attempting to open their doors will result in them jumping out and biting you. They are relatively easy to avoid. However, something very interesting about Dupe is what happens to them if they are crucified. You see, if you use a crucifix on Dupe, they will physically be killed. In fact, the way they are killed is pretty gruesome too, as a giant hole is essentially blasted into the front of their head. We know this as after crucifying Dupe, you'll be able to explore the room they are residing in, which isn't actually a room, but rather the insides of the entity that was carved out from the crucifix. Around the room we can find several veins, the cut-off hands of Dupe, and most intriguingly, a large red hole in the ceiling which is theorized to be the creature's esophagus, which is the tube that connects the throat to the stomach. Now, to a normal player, this may just seem like a cool visual Easter egg for killing the entity. But, as you may know, I am not a normal player! You see, this room tells us something very important about Dupe as a whole, that being that they are absolutely massive in size. I don't think you realize just how gigantic this creature is. Here, take a look at this comparison I made between Dupe's room and their face and arms. You could easily fit over 30 copies of their face onto the surface of the room alone, a trait which doesn't exist in any other entity in the game, or as a matter of fact, any other animal on this planet. However, that isn't the end of it, as we have yet to consider that Dupe's room is merely just their head. You see, given how it's likely the red hole in the ceiling of the room is the entity's esophagus, we know that the room itself just takes place behind Dupe's face. And given how there even is an esophagus, it is implied that the entity has a stomach, which isn't even shown in the model. We also haven't taken into account if the entity has other body parts which aren't shown, such as legs. What this all means is that Dupe's body is incredibly disproportionate to their face and arms, being tens and maybe even hundreds of times bigger than what is let on normally in-game. This is where the true body horror comes in, as not only is Dupe's body incredibly massive, but given how the esophagus is located on the top of the mouth, it's possible the stomach as well as the rest of the entity's body is too. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Dupe's true form looks like, so any depiction of it would be incredibly inaccurate. However, I wouldn't be surprised if at least the general shape of the entity appeared similar to this. As you can see, the arms, which were recolored so they could be more easily seen, and the face are only a small portion of the entire body. Obviously, this depiction downplays a lot of the details on the entity, but if you look at Dupe in this way, it becomes a whole lot more terrifying as they are absolutely colossal in size. It is because of this trait that I think that Dupe is one of the scariest entities in the whole game. This thing is hiding within the walls of the hotel and the mines, and no normal player would ever realize that. Their immense size makes it impossible for them to move at all, which is likely the reason why they camp out behind fake doors. Living like that also must be kind of painful, as the entire weight of the entity's body rests on top of their head, and this weight is immovable through any means, so they are stuck like this for their whole life. It kinda makes you feel sad for them in a way, but that is until you remember that they are out to kill you, so in the end, this probably serves to benefit you, the player. Anyways, that was essentially the entire video. I wanted to highlight just how massive Dupe is, at least in terms of lore, as many people don't realize just how big one of these things are. It truly is quite terrifying when you really think about it. So with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what you think of Dupe, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.